Today's episode is proudly sponsored and brought to you by our good friends over at Pet Matrix Premium Canine Supplements. Straight Up Dog Talk is so excited to be partnered with Pet Matrix and jump into their family. After exhausting several other pet supplement brands, I am getting the support and results I have been searching for both Toby and Fitz. Pet Matrix supports all three pillars of canine wellness using their Cell Matrix delivery. It delivers nutrition directly into the cell. If you're looking for a supplement that pairs with nature and science, look no further and get your dog on Pet Matrix today. This stuff works, period. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, the podcast where pet parents, pet guardians, and pet professionals come together to dive into real issues in dog parenting. From controversial training methods to sensitive health topics, we're getting raw and real about what it means to care for our canine companions. Join us every Wednesday for unfiltered conversations, expert insights, and personal stories that will make you laugh, cry, and grow as a pet parent. No topic is off limits and no question goes unanswered. You won't get one perspective here. You'll get them all because every dog is different and every human is too. You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. I'm back again with another guest this week. We have Jaron from YumWoof, and he is going to talk to us all about dog nutrition and what he calls the Cocoa Mega Effect. How are you doing tonight, Jaron?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about my favorite topic, dog nutrition. I pretty much live and breathe this stuff. So hopefully we can help some people out there.
Yeah, nutrition has been a journey for me. We've been going down this road for about a year and a half now. I have a picky eater. We've gone through a lot of different kinds of foods, but we incorporated YumWoof into our diet after you and I initially talked, and they love it. I want to talk a little bit about your product and why you created the food and why it's so awesome. Give everybody a rundown of what you have available and different flavors and that stuff.
I'll start with kind of the beginning of YumWoof and, why I'm so passionate about this. YumWoof, we make air-dried dog food to very high standards in a lot of ways that I'm sure we'll discuss. But really, it all came back to me learning that all of my skin allergies are actually food allergies. That was several years ago, but it led me on this deep dive where I did data analytics on 3,000 clinical studies, these NIH studies, particularly showing what ingredients were tied to dog longevity. And in particular, when you mentioned my book, The Canine Cocoa Mega Effect, that book summarizes a lot of these studies. And in particular, I go deep into what fats have been shown to be aligned with longevity in dogs. This really unique combination of coconut oil and omega-3s and these really interesting synergies that those have on each other. It's very new research that I cover in that book. Won't surprise anyone to hear that seed oils are bad for your dog, especially when they're oxidized, aka in the form of dry kibble, which I'm sure we'll also discuss too. Really, I'm constantly thinking about what ingredients are tied to dog longevity so that we can use that in our food, so that I can put that in my dog's belly and hopefully he can live forever. That's really where the company started. As I mentioned, we make air-dried dog food, and I'm most excited about our newest product line that we launched in April, which is called Perfect Superfood. And that is this nose to tail recipe with hypoallergenic meats, no chicken or beef. We see so many dogs allergic to those. In fact, 15% of dogs are allergic to chicken or beef. A lot of people know that chicken allergies are very high in dogs, but beef allergies are just as high now, which is pretty interesting. So we made it with all hypoallergenic proteins. When I say a nose to tail recipe, what I mean by that is we're using all the organ meats, we're using all the animal. And that allows us to make it synthetic free. So there are no synthetic vitamins and minerals in Perfect Superfood either. One of the things I've been covering in my reels recently, I go study by study showing, for instance, in a vitamin D supplement that is from a synthetic origin doesn't have the same benefits on our dogs or even on humans as a naturally derived vitamin D supplement. It wouldn't be a supplement in that case. You'd probably just be eating the liver of some animal. But same goes with all these other vitamins like A, B12, naturally derived choline. It's highly bioavailable, meaning that the body absorbs it and uses it, but it also has these positive benefits that might not be derived from a synthetically sourced version of choline. And When you think about synthetic vitamins and minerals, especially the minerals, a lot of people are concerned about iron supplementation right now. That's like a very recent kind of panic in the pet community. Same things, like the research shows that synthetic iron isn't the same. Our dog's body doesn't recognize it as the same molecule as a naturally derived version. Basically, it's just getting back to basics. We are trying to replicate a raw diet, add a few ingredients that have been shown across studies to be aligned with longevity, but really just 85% meats, getting all the nutrients from organ meats. That's actually the first thing that canines go for in the wild too. Interestingly, they go straight for the most nutrient packed part of the animal. It really isn't rocket science. It's just including the right ingredients and then cooking them at very low temperatures so that you keep all the nutrients intact. You don't oxidize any of the fats, which is a really big problem, which we should definitely go into. It's like, why is dry kibble so bad? It's, the oxidized fats.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've just tried to really perfect perfect superfood in every way.
Well, I really like the bioavailability because we have worked with Pet Matrix for a long time, and they are a company that has supplements for dogs, and their products are 100% bioavailable. They go right directly into the bloodstream, and they support the stomach, the mind, and they support the body with inflammation. Tanisha has come on and talked a lot about bioavailability, so I love hearing that about dog food because that's not something that you think about a lot. The vitamins and the pills, and when you give those things, the dog's body has to undo. They have to work harder to get very little amounts of the nutrients that are available in those things. But when you have a food that digests completely and gets into the bloodstream and is bioavailable to their body is now working smarter, not harder. And you are increasing the longevity of the dog's life because you're putting less stress on the body. I love how much I'm learning about the nutrition world and how much it really does affect it and why kibble is so bad. And this kind of stuff is exactly why I stopped using kibble because of all of the things that I learned. Specifically, where it started was learning that percentages on the bags are not necessarily accurate, and they don't have to be because there's not really any process to say this is FDA approved and you have to follow these certain things. It's kind of a lawless area for dog food. So I think it's really important to talk about why regular kibble is so stressful on the dog's body.
I think that's a really interesting point. You hear people talk a lot about stress, and stress has all of these effects on the body. For instance, our bodies or our dog's bodies create more cortisol if they have stress, and that has other impacts on them that are going to affect how long they live. It's going to affect their hormonal balances. It's going to affect a lot of things. When we often think about stress or stress starts, a lot of us think about a stressful situation. People tend to think about environmental effects, but there's this whole other side of it that is very much based in nutrition. In fact, there's a whole chapter in my book that I did in collaboration with Dr. Ava Frick, who's a very well-known holistic veterinarian. She's great. When I met her, she was saying some things about stress and how that's affecting mineral imbalances in our dog's body. And at first I was like, man, I'm into holistic stuff, but this sounds out there. So in doing this chapter with her, that was actually my opportunity. And I think we went through 20 or 30 studies that are cited in my book specifically for that chapter that really prove that she was right. Some of the things we look at are not just environmental, but also some of the nutritional causes of stress, which is very underlooked. And then we find one of the most common causes, it's definitely the dry kibble. Why is that? Two reasons. One, the ingredients tend to be pretty bad. You can have a dry kibble with good ingredients, and so we'll address that separately. But a lot of them, you get into some of the major, cheaper ones. Just look at the first three ingredients on the bag, and are there any things that wouldn't be in your kitchen would be a first question to ask. Meat meals are very common. Meat meals are the absolute worst. Also, when you start to search online about meat meals, there's this whole group of people I'm convinced that are paid by Purina that are defending meat meals who claim that it's a highly digestible source of protein. So one, these are always in Purina One forums, but two, the reason you know that these are being paid by someone is just nobody talks like that. Highly digestible is actually something something that's kind of interesting to think about. It's just that nobody really knows about this topic. Nobody really cares about high digestibility. Is that really what any of us pet parents, is that our number one thing we're going to go onto a Reddit forum and start to argue about? No, there's this whole troll army out there who's talking about highly digestible proteins in meat meals, whereas let's just use some common sense and look at how it's made. Meat meals are basically taking the absolute scraps of an animal. Let's just look at beef. So they've taken all the parts of beef that are going to be used for human consumption. Those have already been packaged, sent away to grocery stores. Then you have the less desirable cuts. Maybe they're closer to bones or they have a lot of tendons in them. Those are a lot of the cuts that are going to tend to be used in dog food. So if you see like beef as the number one recipe, we're not talking filet mignon, which might be okay. After that, they take everything that's remaining. It's a lot of bone. It's just rest of the animal carcass that couldn't be used for any other purpose. And now they're going to ship that sometimes for a couple of days unrefrigerated. There are lots of images online about some of these trucks that have tipped over and they're very gross. So the worst of the worst parts of the animal arrive at these factories and then they're essentially boiled down until it becomes a protein powder. Some of the problems with that are that any fats in there are going to be highly oxidized at that point. So you're just talking about, the most highly processed material that can possibly use and claim to be a protein. And that's being put as usually the number 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredient, depends on the brand. Unfortunately, that's not even the worst part. Hill's, one of their top 3 ingredients is always corn gluten meal. Anytime I talk about this one in my videos, it's also very interesting. There will always be one person who comes out there defending corn gluten meal. And it's just like, use some common sense. Is that the best possible ingredient that we can be feeding our dogs? Do you eat corn gluten meal in your own diet? Is that how you sustain yourself for longevity? It's a lot of these common sense things. If we get rid of the processed ingredients, that's number one. Number two is the way that it's cooked. With dry kibble, it uses a cooking process called hot extrusion. I encourage anyone watching this to go onto YouTube and search for dry kibble hot extruder and just watch a video of how this works. Essentially, it's this grinding machine. It's screws, like huge industrial screws that push this mash through them. And through that process, it's cooked at 450 degrees, so very high heat and high pressure. There is no oven. There is this grinder, and the food is being pushed through there at high temperatures, high pressure, and that oxidizes all the fats. A lot of people talk about how it grinds all the nutrients down on the molecular level, and that's true too. But that's what most people already kind of know. But the even bigger problem than that is that it is oxidizing the fat. What are oxidized fats? Why does that matter? Oxidized fats are something called free radicals. And free radicals are molecules with unpaired electrons. What they do is they need to bond with another electron. So the way they do that when we or our dogs eat them is they steal that from cells inside our dog's body. Lots of research. We're talking university studies, lots and lots of them showing both the human and dog diet through oxidized seed oils. When we eat free radicals, it is stealing electrons from cells in our body. What that does is it causes cellular degeneration, and that leads to faster aging. So we wonder why dogs who switch off of dry kibble live 2 years longer. That's why. It's because we're getting rid of the free radicals. We're no longer doing that sped up aging. We're just letting them live a normal lifespan. And then, of course, there are things we can do to hopefully increase their lifespan from there. That's what I really try to explain to people. Anyone who's feeding dry kibble, it is my mission in life to get them to stop. There's so many options out there. Air dry, fresh food, baked kibble. It's a very loosely defined term, but some of the baked kibble is at lower temperatures. Just find a dog food that's made at low temperatures. Fresh food being part of our dog's diet is very important as well. At least 50% of our dog's food can use a DIY mix so that they're getting fresh food in there. For people who aren't on a budget, there are lots of fresh food brands out there as well. That's really the core, is getting low temperature cooking, the right ingredients in your dog's body, and they'll live a long, long time.
What do you think about freeze-dried food?
Freeze-dried from a nutritional standpoint is fine. The thing I don't personally like about freeze-dried is just the texture. You know, it's so lightweight that when I feed it to my dog, I just feel bad. Sorry, buddy. I wish I could give you a real meaty, real meal here, but this is all we got. I don't
It
personally...
is very light. It's like popcorn.
Yeah, it's basically popcorn for dogs, but it is a lot healthier.
I just wondered because you said all those other ones and you didn't say that one. So I thought, well, I should just ask. It's been a learning process switching over from kibble. And we used to be on science diet and it got recalled. And that's when I was like, oh, no, no, no. And so then I went down this rabbit hole of learning all about nutrition. Honestly, we use probably 3 or 4 different brands of food now, and we just kind of mix it up. But specifically, your food we use for our treats and toppers because both dogs love it. We use the superfood, the meat lovers. It's so funny. I have a picky eater, and the second I cut that bag open, his nose is in the air. He's ready to go. And he'll even trade his ball for a piece of it, which is
I
pretty
love
big
to
deal.
hear. Yeah, we see so many picky eaters. We're a 4-year-old company now, plus another year of product formulation in our first product, Perfect Kibble, which despite the name is an air-dried dog food. But one of the banes of my existence was some of these picky eaters we see. And I'm not sure that we had necessarily that much higher rates than any other brand, but I definitely came to the conclusion that there are certain ingredients dogs don't like, which we can go into. But one of the probably like least understood ones is synthetic vitamins and minerals. I've come to the conclusion that dogs absolutely hate the smell and taste of them. And of course, they're in most dog food. So our customer repeat order rate, it's always been pretty good. But with Perfect Superfood, it's substantially higher than Perfect Kibble. And I think one of the reasons for that is the fact that we just don't use any of those synthetics. As we were talking about before, dogs in the wild, they go straight for the organ meats. They're biologically trained to like that flavor. So by including more of that, it's not only healthier for a dog, but dogs love the taste of it more than a dog food with all those synthetic vitamins in them.
I can attest to that because we have a neighborhood cat that kills rabbits all the time and leaves them in my yard. And my small dog will go and eat the guts out of the rabbit. He'll share the rabbit with the cats. And I'm just like, that is so disgusting. I hate that this is happening. But yeah, he goes right for the guts. It's kind of wild, but that's where it holds all the nutrients and stuff in that belly too. So it's like 2 meals in one, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know if that's weird that I think that's kind of cute that your dog does that. Definitely hope that rabbit isn't, you always got to be scared of city rabbits. I just am afraid of them digging through trash and stuff. Your dog is just getting back into the wild,
Yeah. He and the cat, they have this little friendship that they've created over dead rabbit. I guess it works for them. They both benefit. Something else that owners don't think about is that dogs have that olfactory experience, right? They smell it, they taste it, and their nose is so much more powerful than ours. It always makes me wonder what their taste buds are like, because if their nose is that powerful, is their taste at a higher level also?
That's a good question.
I want it to be a good experience for my dog.
Well, and on the smell thing, they have a different way of smelling things than us. I think we tend to smell the kind of accumulation and average of every smell that's around us. But dogs, they almost smell things in layers. So if you were eating, I'm trying to think of like a dog friendly recipe, but let's go to human food. If you're eating a lasagna and you had a dog sense of smell, you would smell tomato separately. You would smell olive oil separately and like all those things separately. So that also is what makes it harder with formulating dog food, especially for picky eaters, because dogs do have that kind of extra sensitivity. And if there's just one thing that they don't like in there, then they won't eat it and they can pick it out. It doesn't matter how you cover it. If they can still smell that one layer, they're not going to be eating their food that you paid a lot of money for. We definitely try to think about those things. And honestly, just getting back to basics, getting back to organ meats, that really helps. One tip, this isn't necessarily something that dogs ate out in the wild, but nutritional yeast works really well. I also have a picky eater, so I've tried everything and I have other tips up my sleeve too. But nutritional yeast is something that when I ask people, like nobody's ever tried it, works amazingly well. You can just pick that up at pretty much any supermarket now.
We might have to try that. I think that a lot more people are starting to realize that eating is an experience for their their dog too. And like you said, dogs smell things in layers. And a lot of people who do scent work with their dogs are going to understand that, because that's how they train them to target on a scent. And then they can always smell that scent no matter where they are, right? So airport dogs looking for drugs or illegal cargo or whatever, or military dogs that are sniffing out bombs and things like that. They can smell those things so differently than humans do. That's the same way that it works with scent training for service dogs. Anxiety smells the same in me as it smells in you. Heart palpitations smells the same in me as it smells in you. Dogs are just very capable of identifying things on a much deeper level than we are as humans. Scent is an experience for us, but I don't think enough people appreciate that it's an experience for our dogs too. And I love that your mission here is to make sure that the experience is good and that they're enjoying it. And I think that it's really neat that you've identified foods that they don't like. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the things that they don't like that you found?
Besides the synthetic vitamins and minerals, the second thing I would say that a lot of dogs don't like is, sadly, antioxidants. We're talking about cranberries in particular, tart cherry, vitamin C. And if you've tried antioxidants yourself, you'll know that they're very tart. It's not even a good taste for humans. It's just we can convince ourselves a lot of times that this is good for us. Sadly, dogs don't do that. They are just going to say, no, that's disgusting. So our first dog food had a lot of cranberry in it, and we actually toned that down when we did our V2 and increased the blueberry and to counterbalance. Our first product line, though, is very different from, new one, Perfect Superfood. Perfect Superfood is very raw inspired, whereas Perfect Kibble was very much inspired by the DCM heart issue. I would call that more of a humanized pet food, not so much a raw inspired pet food. So everyone has their preferences. I learned from that first one, people want a grain inclusive diet with blueberries and cranberries and some oats and all that kind of stuff like that. That was Perfect Kibble. I personally grew away from that mentality of recipe, but a lot of people still love it. I try to convince people to go to Perfect Superfood, and people tell me that their dog has to have a grain inclusive diet. So instead of fighting with them, we just try to offer people options. And from that original recipe, there were several things that I came to the conclusion of as well. So another one would be glycerin. Glycerin isn't actually good or bad for our dogs, and it is a very good way to keep a food fresh, soft, and chewy. That's why you see it in so many foods. There's nothing that can replace it. But if you've ever tried glycerin, I don't recommend taking a teaspoon of glycerin, but if you ever want to do that, people always describe glycerin as sweet, which is true, but they don't describe it as spicy, which it also is. And so we have all these dog treats with glycerin in it. And I think it's sweetness that dogs probably don't like as much as sugar. And then you have the spicy element too. So that's my other ingredient that I feel pretty confident that dogs aren't that into. But yeah, the antioxidants, that's a sad one. Helps them live longer. Definitely try to give your dog some antioxidants, but they don't really like the taste. That's kind of bringing up real quick in my mind this interesting fact about vitamin C that Dr. Ava Frick also originally taught me, and I researched and turned out to be true. And it's the fact that dogs don't actually need vitamin C in their diet, believe it or not. Humans do.
Really?
Yeah. But dogs have this amazing capability to actually produce all of the vitamin C they need internally. So their body can actually manufacture. So if you feed them 0 vitamin C, their body is going to manufacture 100 of their daily value requirement of it. And in fact, feeding our dogs vitamin C can actually cause them to have too much of it, and then it binds to calcium and causes a calcium deficiency. So with people who are maybe concerned about calcium deficiencies in particular, their dog is kind of having these bone issues, there could be lots of causes to that. But if you do have a lot of vitamin C in your dog's diet, especially if it's some of the synthetic kinds, there's like a 26-letter word that is a synthetic vitamin C, and that's widely known to be the worst one. A better one might be just having oranges or something. But Yeah, those are things to watch out for. And definitely the vitamin C thing is very interesting. And it also shows how dogs are like 98% the same as humans. There are still these differences that mean that they shouldn't necessarily eat a strict human diet. A lot of people know that dogs shouldn't eat chocolate or garlic or onion, but not a lot of people know about the vitamin C thing.
Yeah, and grapes or raisins as well. They're
That's
not
right.
supposed to have those too. So I think that those are things that are really important to touch on because there are people that are trying to cook fresh meals, raw meals, and there's not a ton out there on how to do that. I looked into it and I haven't completely, I would like to eventually switch over to some raw, but my little dog has pancreatitis. And so he cannot have a raw diet because it will just rip his little stomach up. So he has done great on your food. And we haven't had any incidents or flare ups, which has been fantastic because I have to be so careful about what I feed him. And I was so worried going into this journey that changing his food would potentially cause him to be more sick, when in fact, it's actually done the exact opposite, where he's had way less flare ups. In the last year, he's only had two, and he was normally having them once a month.
It makes me so happy to hear that. We actually specifically tried to formulate perfect superfood to be appropriate for pancreatitis because for the last 4 years, I've been seeing so many pet parents come to us. Perfect Kibble was based on this like holistic 1-to-1 protein to fat ratio, which can be great for dogs who have different kinds of allergies or inflammation. Certainly not the right fit for dogs with pancreatitis. So we had to turn so many people away. And over again, people were saying, I love the ingredients in your food, but my dog has pancreatitis and needs a low fat diet and we can't feed it to him. And I definitely took that to heart. And I just understood that there weren't many high quality pancreatitis dog foods out there. So we really tried to incorporate that into our recipes. Our low fat turkey recipe is the lowest fat dog food we offer. And then all of our perfect superfood recipes are pretty low fat in general. I haven't heard about a single flare up, and we've had lots of people with dogs who have pancreatitis coming over to us, and it's a real concern. There are several breeds, like especially schnauzers. Schnauzers are so incredibly prone to it that we should just never feed a high fat diet to that breed. We're always trying to hear people's needs and complaints and make our food better and better for them always.
Well, it's been a really positive experience for us, and I'm really glad that we have had such wonderful success with it because I like to support businesses that are about supporting our animals. You care about how long your dog lives, which means you care about, how long other people's dogs live. No, I think you're right. The food that we've been feeding dogs for years and years and years and years is just outdated now. As we advance through the years, they get outdated and we don't update them. And now we start to see all these health deficiencies in dogs. Now, whether it's a combination of bad breeding, food allergies, and other health things, or if it's just the diet alone, it's still a negative impact. And being mindful of what we're putting into our dogs' bodies, just like we are mindful of what we're putting into our own bodies, is going to have positive repercussions. And I think that people, the more they learn about things like this, about how bioavailability works, about how ingredients should be listed. You don't want too much starch. You don't want too much fat. I never even would have thought sawdust being in dog food. That was the one that really got me when I read a label and it was like 13% sawdust. But it's a filler. That's what they're using it for.
Yep, cellulose. If you see it on the label, that means sawdust. That one's really sad. That just really goes to show how little the super industrial dry kibble manufacturers don't care about our dogs' nutrition. You were just making me think of one really important point, which is the other kind of underlooked ingredient in dog food, and that's the fats in it. And a big reason why people have been coming to us for the last year and a half is the fact that we strictly don't use seed oils in our food. That is a core tenet. My wife slash co-founder, Anna, We both really try hard to avoid it in our own diets. It's sad how many things at the grocery store we have to turn away that we really want because it has a seed oil in it. Unfortunately, the way that AFCO formulation is set, it's very hard to reach omega-6 requirements without seed oils. It's certainly possible, though. It's just difficult. And so a lot of dog food brands, they don't even think twice about including them. These include sunflower oil, safflower oil. The worst is canola oil. Lots of videos on YouTube about the 12-step process, including lots of chemicals that is used to make canola oil. But most of the so-called high-quality premium brands in dog food out there use either sunflower oil or safflower oil. The problem is that it's very high in omega-6, so it turns the ratios off between omega-3 and omega-6. So the ideal ratio you want is a 1-to-1, 3-to-6 ratio. Unfortunately, most dog food comes in a 1-to-6 omega-3 to 6 ratio, which is 6 times more inflammatory molecules than anti-inflammatory molecules. So we wonder why dogs are getting all this inflammation. Like, that is basically why. Like, fats are essentially what turns on and off inflammation. And I have a whole chart even showing how that is true and how like that turns on other inflammatory molecules like cytokines and PGE2, things that most people have never heard of. But if someone wants to refute me on this in the comments, just read that chapter in my book and it explains why I'm right. The fats are very, very important. Getting those in the right ratios. Unfortunately, most dry kibble is a 1-to-16 ratio, which is the same as American fast food like McDonald's. And AFCO's requirements are 1-to-30. That's the absolute minimum that they've set. And that's even worse. There hasn't been an emphasis in the American dog food industry to include enough omega-3s in the recipes. Of course, we can supplement our dog's food with more omega-3s. Cod liver oil or salmon oil are both great options. Cod liver oil is more expensive, but doesn't have a taste or smell. So that's really good if you want your dog to lick you after. Salmon oil is a little bit more affordable, and a lot of dogs love the flavors. It can be good if you have a picky eater. Your dog's breath will smell like salmon oil though. Yes. So those are very good options. If you go the cod liver oil route, you can also put on the nutritional yeast and it actually helps it coat and stick to the food. So both of them can work really well together. Your dog doesn't need that much. Another thing is with puppies who are 18 months or less, giving them omega-3s and coconut oil in those first 18 months creates more microbiome diversity over their entire lifetime. So it has lifelong effects. Same with giving them probiotics in those first 18 months, also has similar probiotic effects that last a lifetime, meaning after 18 months, you can stop feeding those things and your dog will be better off for it for the rest of their life. Whereas if you start them at age 3 or 4, your dog is going to benefit the same, but you can never really stop or those effects kind of go away. The fats are so important. It's something that I really try to explain to people. And also the cooking method matters a lot because if you see salmon oil or seed oils in a dry kibble, those are heavily oxidized. And when I say that, it's not theoretical. It's just that the cooking temperature used to make those foods will oxidize the fats under all circumstances. It's a problem. Let's just get the oxidized fats out of our dog's diet. It does require us to not feed them dry kibble. There's no such thing as a high quality dry kibble for that reason, the oxidized fats and the hot extrusion cooking method. Once we progress beyond that, then we can start looking at other ingredients. Since the whole DCM thing came out in 2018, a lot of people have been talking about no peas and legumes. It certainly is something I believe in. Nobody knows if that was the cause. All the people went towards grain-free diets. A lot of these brands started using peas and legumes as filler ingredients. Those are highly inflammatory. They include lectins as an example. So DCM being an inflammatory issue, there's logically possibility there. Just to get into this DCM hot debate for a brief moment here, 500 households were affected. The FDA has completely backtracked on its stance. So most people haven't heard that, and most veterinarians unfortunately haven't heard that too. So please share that with your veterinarian. Don't just say some guy on the internet said it to you, though. Actually go and read. You can search for FDA stance on DCM, and you're going to see that in 2023, they came out with a final update where they said they're not going to be providing any further updates. They've backtracked their stance on any sort of link between DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy, and grain-free diets. And instead, they've just shown certain brands that it happened to. A really interesting side bit of information that I've never heard anyone else say is that if you look, several dogs in the same household got DCM. There were over 1,000 dogs who got it in total among 500 homes. So if we really think about that, it means that it was those specific brands of dog food. There were tens of millions of dogs across the US eating grain-free diets. There were tens of millions of dogs even eating a lot of these same brands, but it was these specific batches that multiple dogs got DCM from. So wouldn't it make more sense that maybe a hidden carrier ingredient in the vitamin and mineral supplement mix, probably from China, might have had some chemical in it that killed all these dogs? I don't know for a fact, but when you look at those facts, to me, it would suggest that it was definitely not grain-free diets. And so it's such a shame that so many people have been scared away from them, because when we look at most grain inclusive diets, the unfortunate issue there is that grains have all sorts of anti-nutrients, phytates, lectins, the list goes on and on. Our dogs never ate them in the wild. They lived for millions of years without them.
When dogs were in the wild, they didn't eat grain. They don't just go munch on that. Dogs are going to look for berries. They're going to look for rabbit, foxes, or deer carcasses, anything like that, that they could bring down together or bring down by themselves, eat. Yeah. That's the primary thing that they're going to go for. I feed grain-free because I feel that it is leaning more towards what I would feed if I was feeding a raw diet. I wouldn't be supplementing grain into it at all. So I feed grain-free because I think that it is more natural in what their genetics and instincts actually call for.
Yeah, absolutely. You could argue, if you look at the canine wolf diet, as it's called, it's approximately 54% protein, 45% fat, and 1 to 5% carbohydrates. When we break that down, most of those carbohydrates came from the intestines and the stomach within their prey animals. So it's definitely possible that they had 0.2 to 1% of their diet as some sort of grain, but the amount of grains that are put in dog food today, especially the top brands like Hill's, it's within the top 3 ingredients. That's way too much. There's no need for that. That's not providing nutritional value to them. That's providing inflammation.
So many dogs already suffer from inflammation problems, and we have so many dogs who are having motor skills and mobility issues later on in life, and then they have all that inflammation in there, and it just makes it worse. So again, this is another area that we just really need to be conscious of what we're giving to our dogs. This has been a really lot of information. I'm sure there's going to be people who have follow-up questions, but again, there is a book that Jaron wrote that's called The Canine Coca Mega Effect, and it really breaks down everything that we talked about tonight, and will answer a lot of questions, I think, if you have them. But please do feel free to reach out to Jaron or me if you have questions, and I can pass them along. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, don't feed your dog dry kibble. Thanks so much for having me. Everyone can follow me on Instagram at Jaron Lukas. That's Lucas with a K. Jaron is spelled exactly how you think it would be. That's a joke. I assume we'll put that somewhere on the screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jaron Lukas on Instagram. And I'm always available if people have questions. I post a lot of reels about everything from how to feed your dog to the most controversial dog food topics out today. We try to keep it pretty interesting over there.
Amazing. And we will drop a link to YumWoof in the episode details along with the discount, which is Emily15. So you guys can save 15% off of your first bag of YumWoof. Thank you guys for being here this week, and we'll see you next week on Straight Up Dog. Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited and produced under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk, LLC, and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe, and be sure you don't miss an episode. And leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerry Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.